it seems like they're worse today in terms of the media's treatment of Donald Trump or maybe Republicans more broadly. What is your assessment of how things are going with the campaign?
You know, a few years ago, I got a call from a donor of ours. And he said, Brent, I've given you about $1 million in the last 4 years. And I'm reading a direct mail piece, and it says the media are more liberal than ever. And he said, exactly how well is my investment in you working? Hell of a question. But here was my answer. It didn't matter how left-wing the media were, so long as the public knew they were left-wing. And if the public knew enough not to believe what they were being given, and therefore we would be neutralizing them, and therefore I can't stop a liberal from being a liberal, but I can expose a liberal for being liberal. Now that's the bias by commission. What's happened in the last few years is that we've seen the flip side appear, which is truly dangerous. It's the bias by omission, where the media simply will not report news if it goes contrary to the narrative. I'll give you an example of this. We did studies every single month going back to the spring of 2015 of the media's coverage of Trump. 92%, 93%, 91%, 94% negative, month after month after month. There was 1 month where it was 100% negative stories from the networks. Every single one. Okay, so the bias by commission is there, but the bias by omission was such that during that time period, he was racking up one success after another. But when you had 98% negative coverage, nobody was seeing the successes of it. And that's a phenomenon that's come forward, far more dangerous than the bias by commission. And that just is why there's a screaming need for the daily signals of the world to tell the stories that the networks have decided that they're clearly committed not to reporting. Look, we've already done another study this month. It's 95.3% negative. The coverage of the lawsuit, of the trial in Miami, I think it was 298 minutes that the network spent on it. I can guarantee you there wasn't a minute spent by them on the proposition that this was unconstitutional, which it turned out to be when the case was thrown out yesterday. I bet you there wasn't a single minute spent on that proposition. It was all about how Donald Trump was guilty, when in fact he wasn't.
And we know that this can have a real life consequence on the election. Let's rewind 4 years. I remember you famously did a study and evaluation looking at the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story. New York Post and other outlets obviously breaking that story in the late stages of the 2020 presidential election. And there was social media platforms, other media outlets that just wanted to wipe it out and pretend that it didn't happen. Tell us how a situation like that can influence how people actually vote.
Sure. We did a survey after the elections where we looked at, it was 5 or 6 different issues that we knew had not been covered. And we polled Biden voters in the 7 battleground states in Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, to ask them, did they know about this issue? And if they didn't know about it, now that they knew about it, would they still have voted for Joe Biden? It was remarkable, Rob, because every number was the same. We asked questions like, did you know that the United States had become energy independent? 50% of Biden's voters had no idea about this. Did you know that Kamala Harris had a voting record to the left of Bernie Sanders? Almost 50% of Biden's voters didn't know about this. We asked, did you know that Donald Trump had been recommended for 3 Nobel Peace Prizes? Did you know he created 11 million jobs that year? That the GDP was growing in post-COVID at a 30% rate? And 1 or 2 other questions. Every answer was the same. In every instance, Joe Biden or Donald Trump would have carried Nevada, Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. But then the big one was the laptop. Now, every conservative knew about Hunter Biden and the laptop story. The assumption is because you know it and I know everybody knows it. We asked Joe Biden's voters, did you know about the laptop? 44.9% of Joe Biden's voters had never heard of Hunter Biden or the laptop. And we asked them, first of all, you ask yourself, why didn't they know? Because NBC didn't report it, ABC didn't report it, CBS didn't report it, Facebook admitted they censored it, Elon Musk found out that his company had censored it, the New York Times admitted they censored it, the Washington Post admitted they censored it. These were Biden's voters who are that audience. 44.9% had never heard of it. When asked, would you have voted for Joe Biden? 9.4%, almost 10% of Biden's voters said they would not have done it. We tested those 7 states. Donald Trump would have won all 7 battleground states. He would have won 317 electoral votes, absolute landslide. But had we tested blue states, he would have carried blue states too. He definitely would have taken some blue states. So if the news media had only reported the news, and Rob, I'm not recommending anything more than that, simply report the news. Had they done that, we would be talking President Donald Trump today.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's the power of omission, as you were just describing. What is it that motivates this dislike and almost hatred for Donald Trump?
And yeah, I've asked myself that question. Hard to tell. I think it's something that they work themselves into a tizzy over this. I've never seen, even Ronald Reagan wasn't, that didn't. But here's the difference. Donald Trump is a master marketer. Donald Trump had Kellyanne Conway as his big consultant in 2016. I know Kellyanne, I know the polling she does, and I know that her polling was saying enemy numero uno is the media, and Donald, go after them every single day. And in every single speech, he went after the press. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, whatever, however that one works. He knew that if he went after the press, that his support would grow. Nobody had ever picked a fight with the press like he did. Nobody had publicly shamed them or humiliated them, whereas 99% of politicians are afraid of the media because if they hit me once and I respond, they'll hit me again, and I don't want that. Donald Trump understood that by going after them, he could win. He could win the battle. So he picked the fights, and I think these arrogant elitists had never seen that happen to them before. I hate to tell you, Rob, in what's happened in the last week, they'll never admit it. Nobody on the left will ever admit this. But you know, and I know, there are a whole lot of people, sadly, in this country who have said to themselves, if only that bullet had gone an inch to the right, my problems would have been solved. And Rob, here's another reality. A whole lot of those people thinking that way are reporters today, are journalists today.
Yeah.
And that's and they can deny it till the cows come home. But that's how many of them are thinking.
It's sad that some have even been willing to say it publicly on social media platforms. You know, one of the things that we've talked a lot about traditional media, legacy media, but one of the things that you have done at the Media Research Center is also put the spotlight on social media platforms. You have built an incredible coalition of organizations devoted to free speech. And so share with us why that is an important focus of yours these days.
Well, whether we like it or not, social media is going to be the primary platform of conversation in the future, and I don't like it because it just is fueling the dumbing down of American culture. However, I saw one poll that said 56% of people say they get their news from Facebook. And that's where they go for information. You're no longer going for news, you're going for information. Big tech has understood just how powerful they are. And there is a real effort to control the flow of information, not just in the United States, worldwide. We've never seen, in the history of man, we've never seen an effort where a handful of corporations have the power to control what is and isn't said worldwide. If you speak out against climate change, you're shut down by YouTube or by Google or by Facebook. Even on X, it's happening still. Elon doesn't know it, but his staff are still doing it to him. These sites shut you down, not just in the United States, but worldwide. They want only one perspective on it. Abortion is another one. Pro-lifers are targeted on a regular basis. They are enemy number one where big tech is concerned. Donald Trump is another one.
Yeah, COVID, elections. I mean, yeah.
The last 4 elections have been decided by social media in this way. Obama won the presidency in 2008 through Facebook. Nobody saw it coming. He was brilliant in that campaign. In 2012, he doubled down on Facebook again, and again he won. Donald Trump won in 2016 using Twitter. In 2020, big tech said to itself, we're not going to let him win again, so we're knocking him off of Twitter. Had he been on Twitter, that's another way he would have won the presidency. Had he been allowed to be on Twitter, they shut him down. So did big tech play a defining role in 2020? Absolutely they did. That's how powerful they are. But they transcend politics. What concerns me is the cultural power that these people have. And again, I underscore, it's worldwide what they're doing.
Now, the Free Speech Alliance is really focused on solutions, legislative solutions, perhaps. Are you hopeful that members of Congress are starting to recognize that they need to take a more active role instead of this hands-off approach?
I am, but I'm not. I am in that some of them clearly are seeing the importance of this and are committed to it. Others, look, money talks in this business, and money came flooding in to the campaign coffers of a lot of candidates, and suddenly they're not interested anymore. I've seen it happen before in my career. When a media enterprise is in trouble, they just simply bury Washington with money. So there are solutions. Section 230 takes away these special privileges that they have. Daily Signal, you can get sued for what you say on this show. Daily Signal can be sued for something that you say that's improper. You can't sue Facebook. You can't sue a giant like Google because they've gotten away with this nonsense of saying they're not producers, they're just platforms. But you can be sued, but they can't be. If they were held to the same standards that the Daily Signal was concerned, think of the Covington kid, that pro-life high school kid who was so vilified for simply standing there. And they accused him of also, he sued CNN and the Washington Post. He got these massive out-of-court settlements where they were very, very happy. Who did more damage to him, CNN or Facebook? Facebook did 100 times more damage. But you couldn't hold them liable the way you could hold CNN. Had you been able to hold them liable, they would have thought very carefully before doing what they did to him. So, I'm sorry, if you take away that Section 230 protection that they have and make them have to behave by the same rules you and I behave by, you will go a long way towards fixing the problem. But the only thing that conservatives are asking for, and we have over 100 organizations and groups worldwide who are joining this, just saying, have an open conversation. Allow free speech. The big tech, I think it's funny. In Hollywood is the most intolerant industry there is culturally. Big tech is the most intolerant industry there is politically. They just simply will. Why do we scare them so much?
I don't know, but I mean, it's something. I mean, you and I know this for years because conservatives have been more tolerant and champions of free speech, and you would think that they would want this, but they have signaled that that's not necessarily the direction that they want to go. So, Brent, share with our viewers and our listeners how they can support the work of the Media Research Center and get involved. You have a great site and NewsBusters where they can keep tabs on all of these things that you're talking about, things of that nature.
What I would say is join come to NewsBusters, learn about what exactly is happening, because we need an educated base. An interesting factoid: last month, Donald Trump in one poll was leading over Biden 48 to 44%. Among people who watched NBC, CBS, and ABC, Biden was winning 55 to 35%. So their power may be waning, it's still there. And when you just need a couple of points to win, ABC, NBC, CBS still have an extraordinary amount of power. So the public needs to know about this, needs to be able to talk to your children about it, talk to your neighbor about this. NewsBuster arms you with the fact. Free Speech America, that is the future, looking at big tech. Again, we have this massive coalition. Thank God Heritage and others are
Yes.
part of this, and thank God for that, because we need that. But understand that your basic freedom, the First Amendment, there's a reason it was the First Amendment. It's the basic freedom of the constitutional experiment is under, it's being threatened today, and in fact, censorship is a way of life now. So the public has to become very, very aware of this threat, this existential threat to its freedom. You can't have democracy if you have censorship. It does not work. So what is more important to you, democracy or censorship? If you like censorship, you're surrendering democracy. If you like democracy, you better do something about censorship.
Yeah, no, it's so important. We're grateful for the work you do, the accountability that you hold journalists to, and frankly, just the team that you've assembled to keep us informed and educated. I know that the Daily Signal really relies on the research that you produce, and so thank you.
By the same token, and your audience needs to know this. When we produce something, one of the very first people we go to is Daily Signal, is giving it to you. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Brent Bozell. We appreciate it. This is Rob Bluey coming to you from the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Stay tuned for more coverage from the Daily Signal.